Hello everyone, and welcome to the third concept of the cardiovascular system. In this video, we're going to cover the valves of the heart and blood circulation. In order to understand the concept of the valves of the heart, their structure, the function, how do they work, it's very important to recap the blood circulation within the heart and how are the things going on the heart. So you guys know that we, as human beings, we like to be right persons. We like to move on the right track. So everything starts with the right. We receive the blood from the body through the right atrium. So atria are your receiving chambers, and then the ventricles are your discharging chambers. So first, everything starts with the right. Your body receives, your heart, receives the blood from the right atrium. It sends it to the right ventricle, and from there it goes to the lungs to get oxygenated. Once the blood gets oxygenated in the lungs, it comes back through the other receiving chamber, which is the left atrium, and from the left atrium it goes to the left ventricle, where your heart pumps that to the body through the aorta. Now we have four valves of the heart. We have two atrioventricular valves. Atrioventricular valves, it means these valves are lying between the atrium and the ventricle. We have one between the right atrium and right ventricle, and we have one between the left atrium and the left ventricle. And we have two other valves, which are the semilunar valves, and these are the ones that guards the aorta and the pulmonary trunk. Now, how will we remember the structure of the atrioventricular valves? Remember that we as human beings, we love by our hearts, and when there is a heart, there are only one and two persons, and your heart lies on the left side of your body. So the left has two. So your left atrioventricular valve, it has two cusps. We call it bicuspid valves. However, the right one, it has three cusps. So it's tricuspid valve. So we have right and left cusps in both of them. And because the right one has three, so the extra one would be the septal valve. So we have two atrioventricular valves. They guard the blood flow between the right and left sides of your heart, between the right atrium, the right ventricle, and left atrium and left ventricle. And these are the tricuspid valve and the bicuspid valve. They are the atrioventricular valves. These are the valves closed. This is the bicuspid one, and this is the tricuspid one. This is on the right side, and this is on the left side. We will talk about these things later on in more details. Now, for the aortic and pulmonary valves, they are semilunar valves, semilunar in shape. They are kind of cup-like structures because they do not contract the same way the atrioventricular valves do. So they have different anatomy, and there is a reason why they look like that. We will cover it, but when we just recap about the diastole and systole and understand the blood flow within the heart itself, and then we will explain why they look like that. So what is diastole and systole? Diastole is basically the relaxation of the heart. So it's when your heart chambers relax, and then when you start to receive blood from everywhere, from the body through the right atrium and then right ventricle, and from the lungs, from the left atrium, then to the left ventricle. And then how will you remember that this is diastole? It is when you dilate. So dilate the heart, relax the heart. It's diastole. It's when you receive blood. However, the systole, it's the opposite. It's when you send the blood to the lungs and to the body. it's when you contract the heart. So contraction of the heart, contraction of your ventricles, whenever you send the blood through the pulmonary trunk to the lungs and through the aorta to the body. So dilation, diastole, relaxation of the heart, opening of the atrioventricular valves. It's when the blood flows from the atrium to the ventricles. And systole, it's when you contract the ventricles. Now you want to send the deoxygenated blood from the right ventricle to the lungs to get oxygenated. And when you want to send the oxygenated blood from the left ventricles through the aorta to the body. So in that case, you want to close off the pathway between the atrium and ventricle. So you want to close off the atrioventricular valves, and you want to open the pulmonary and the aortic valves. Now let's go into another recap. So in the diastole, it's basically the filling of the blood. It's when you receive deoxygenated blood from the body through the superior and inferior vena cava and coronary sinus, all the way to the right atrium. And when you receive the oxygenated blood from the pulmonary through the pulmonary veins from the lungs to the left atrium. And then when you start to send the blood through the heart and from the right ventricle to through the pulmonary trunk to the lungs, it's when you contract the heart. So in the systole, you send the deoxygenated blood that you received from the left atrium through the the right atrium to the right ventricle, and then from the right ventricle to the lungs, and then you get it oxygenated. And here you're receiving the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left atrium, and then through the systole in the contraction, you're sending blood through the ventricles, whether to the body or to the lung. Now, this is another recap. It will make your life easier. So in the diastole, you want to open the channels between the atrium and ventricles. You need to open the atrioventricular valves because you are receiving blood from right and left atrium to the right and left ventricles. In that case, the blood is coming from the body and everywhere to the right atrium, and from the lungs to the left atrium. So you are receiving deoxygenated blood from the body to the right atrium and oxygenated blood from the lungs to the left atrium. And then because you want to send that blood from the right and left atrium to the ventricles, you want the atrioventricular valves to be open. So you guys can see that they are open. In that case, and because these valves at the beginning were open, there will be a backflow. A small amount of blood will come back through the pulmonary trunk and the aorta, and that blood will start to fill these cups. So these semilunar valves will start to be closed off by the weight of the blood. So that's why they look like cup-like structures, because they only close by filling of small amount of the blood that backflows through these two arteries back to them. In this case, they will start to be closed, and then no more blood will come back to the ventricles, because we don't want that blood to come back. We only want to receive from the body and the lungs the newly formed blood. And then going to the systole, what happens is when we contract the ventricles, you are going to start to pull the cusps of the atrioventricular valves, and those ventricles, because they will contract and because they are attached to the atrioventricular valves, they will start to close off the pathway between the atrium and ventricles, right and left sides, because we don't want to receive any more blood. Now we want to send what we've received already through the ventricles, through the pulmonary trunk and aorta, to the lungs and to the body. So in the systole, when we contract, what happens is we will start to send the blood from the right ventricle to the lungs and from the left ventricles to the body. And in that case, we need to close off the atrioventricular valves because we don't want any backflow of the blood back to the atrium. because the ventricles are contracting with a very high pressure, and we want to send the blood to the lungs and body, and we don't want this blood to backflow to the atrium. So when we have systole, we need to close off the atrioventricular valves, and we want to open the aortic and pulmonary valves because we want to send that blood to the lungs and to the body. This is the time to send the blood out of the heart. So with that, these are the references that have been used in this video. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and see you next time.